Clear skies full of white clouds hung over a picturesque setting of a small street during the morning. People making commutes down the sidewalks, some with their pets, others with their children. A line of houses built going down the street, each house with their own layout on the front, making each one unique, despite being built in relatively the exact same way. The front door of one house opens, revealing a young 14-year-old boy. He wore a black jacket, complete with a school logo on the right side of the chest area, with a green blazer underneath, covering a small tie. He wore black trousers and polished shoes that almost appeared to glow underneath the sun. Attached to his back by some straps was a white book bag containing his school textbooks, his lunchbox, and a few other things. His name? Roderick. After straightening out his auburn hair, he takes a step off the porch and begins his trek to school. This was a casual routine for him. 5 days a week, he would leave his home at about 8:30 in the morning and begin a walk to his school. His parents used to drop him off, but since he went to the 10th grade, he decided it would be better if he walked there instead. Once he got off school, he would stay there, taking in knowledge he felt wouldn't have much impact on his future, before being allowed to walk home at precisely 3 o'clock. But today was going to be different for Roderick. You see, dear reader, Roderick has a school crush. Who didn't while they were in school? Maybe just reading that sentence alone brought back some memories for you. Roderick's crush was a girl in the 10th grade, just like him. He felt that way about her ever since the start of the school year. It was currently March. She joined way back in September, apparently transferring from another school. This girl had gorgeous blonde hair that flowed to her shoulders, a beautiful smile she would wear day by day, and pretty much the same uniform as him, albeit the trousers being replaced by a short skirt and white leggings. That girl's name was Scarlett. Roderick and Scarlett both got along very well. In fact, whenever there was a project to work on, those two would often end up working together. Scarlett was a very nice girl. She was a little bit on the shy side, although she would open up more often with Roderick around. One might even wonder, Roderick included, if she felt a certain way about him. The way she would glance at him when he was focused on his work, the way she would giggle at every little inside joke the two shared. In his backpack was a note for her that Roderick wrote the night before, telling her to meet him on the school field after school, since he wanted to tell her something. He imagined meeting up with her, confessing his feelings for her, and the two sharing a passionate kiss. Right there, with no one around but each other. Roderick was suddenly pulled out of his train of thought by the sudden and abrupt wail of a passing ambulance, red and white lights flashing constantly as it sped past. It disappeared around the corner as he continued his walk, taking in the other sights and sounds on his journey. After about 15 minutes or so, he was getting close to the school. In fact, he just needed to walk over a crossing to get there. He pressed a button and waited for the lights to turn red for the traffic. As he waited, he noticed something down a nearby street. He realized it was the same ambulance that went past him earlier, now stopped outside someone's house. The back doors open, revealing the interior. A few seconds later, some paramedics arrived, but something was off. These paramedics were wearing yellow plastic suits, complete with black gloves and clear visors. One was wheeling a gurney towards the ambulance, while the other was holding back a woman. This woman had long black hair and was wearing a blue shirt and gray trousers. But Roderick noticed the heavy line of tears streaming down her face as she wailed, screamed, and cried for the person being taken away. A man standing behind her, wearing a white shirt and black jeans, tears flowing down his face. But it seemed he was trying to keep his composure, which was more than can be said about his wife. when the wheeled stretcher was turned so it could easily fit in the ambulance. The paramedic wheeling it left it briefly to speak to another. It was then Roderick got a look at the person on it. The person strapped to the mobile bed was a young boy, possibly the same age as him. His head was facing away from him, but as the paramedics continued to talk, he weakly turned his head to face his direction. To say the least, Roderick was horrified by what he saw. The boy's skin, originally vibrant and full of life, was now a sickly pale, almost looking completely white. The lips had turned slightly gray, and his eyes were cloudy, almost completely white, although his pupils could still be seen, now with a tint of gray to them. If it wasn't for the boy groaning or giving a violent cough every now and then, Roderick would have swore the boy was already dead. The boy's fingers were weakly closing and opening, possibly his way of keeping himself conscious. The boy was wearing a black shirt with a skull imprint on it, blue jeans, and a pair of red trainers, although the shirt contained a vile-looking stain on it that Roderick could only guess was vomit. The boy's eyes, which were looking upwards in a blank stare, briefly met Roderick's. The boy could only mouth the words, "Help me," to him, before one of the hazmat suit-wearing paramedics returned and placed the stretcher into the ambulance, his mother still crying over her son's condition. It's entirely possible he might have said it out loud, but Roger couldn't hear him, whether due to the distance or due to whatever illness the boy had was beyond anyone's guess. Roderick took one last look at the boy before crossing the road to his school. He could only imagine how much pain that boy was in, but he had more important things to worry about. School was the usual bore fest for Roderick. Another lesson about this, another lecture about that. It all merged together after a while. Some stuff he did find interesting, but he knew he'd end up forgetting about it later on. He also felt a little rough after that game of dodgeball in the gym that day. Who knew that other sophomore kids could throw a ball that hard? It also didn't help that he collided with another student on his team after getting really into the game at one point. Usually, at the end of the day, he would just walk home and play video games until his parents got home. Maybe he'd go over to a friend's place and hang out there for a few hours. But not today. Aside from the plan he had in mind, his friend wasn't present at school today. His parents had called earlier that morning and said he couldn't come in. Something about a severe sickness he had come down with. He also heard rumors around the school about a very bad virus that was making its way across the globe. Apparently, it started in Greenland and then spread quickly to Canada and parts of Russia. Since it arrived so quickly, there wasn't a lot of information about how it's transmitted, what its symptoms were, or anything. Not like Roderick was focused or anything about that. His mind was set upon his plan involving Scarlet. Although he noticed that during lunch, he was developing a strange tickling sensation in his throat, resulting in him having a brief coughing fit. Scarlet was her usual self, making small talk with Roderick, and being shy, giggling at his little jokes and such. The two were sharing an English project together, and had been spending a lot of time together because of this. She even suggested that they go back to her place to continue working on said project after school, although Roderick hoped that the two would be doing a lot more after today. The bell rang for the next lesson to start, so before Roderick ran to class, he took out the note he had and quickly placed it through the hole in Scarlet's locker. 3 o'clock, a time that couldn't come soon enough. It was now time for Roderick to make his move. As soon as the bell rang, he grabbed his backpack and left the classroom with his fellow students. Most of them were heading for the main entrance, but Roderick was moving against the crowd, towards the back of the school. After what felt like ages of walking, he made it out into the field. The field itself was behind the school building. There was a small grass area that other students would play in during recess and lunch, along with a fenced-off court, mostly used for games of tennis and basketball by the school's teams. This area was limited by a line of benches, with a few trees behind them. Beyond those benches was a long stretch of field, with a running track placed into it. Of course, you couldn't keep walking forever. Eventually, you'd end up at a chain-link fence. This fence was specifically made to prevent students from leaving the school premises unannounced. Anyway, Roderick walked beyond the trees, taking out a bouquet of roses from his backpack. He stood in the middle of the field, placing his backpack next to him on the grass, the running track making a perfect loop around him. While standing there, he took note of the sky. Once sunny with some white clouds that morning, was now overcast with gray clouds. He feared that if it started raining, it would put Scarlet off meeting him there. Well, that was if she got the letter in the first place. Fortunately, he didn't have to wait too long, since after a few minutes, he saw Scarlet walking over, her golden hair flowing like a majestic river. She smiled at him upon seeing him and waved, quickly moving at a faster pace to meet up with him. When the two were in earshot of each other, the two began to speak. "Hey there, Rod. I got the letter you dropped off at my locker," Scarlet said, her voice sounding chipper and happy-go-lucky as she usually was. "Bit of sour weather to meet out here, too. I kind of wish I'd brought my coat with me." Roderick sighed before replying, his voice sounding quite low. "Yeah, I could have waited for another day, but I felt like this was important." Scarlet cocked her head slightly, about to ask what Roderick meant. It was then she noticed a bouquet of flowers in his hands and pointed at them. "Did you get those flowers just recently? They look beautiful. Whoever they're for will love them," she said with a smile. Roderick looked down at them before looking back at Scarlet. "Oh God, she looks so beautiful whenever she smiles," he thought to himself before speaking up. "Well," he began, but quickly stopped. Scarlet stopped smiling and took a step closer to Roderick, causing his heart rate to elevate to speeds he didn't even know was possible for someone his age. "Roderick, what's wrong? Is there something on your mind? You know you can tell me anything," she asked, concern present in her voice. Roderick sighed, trying to calm himself down, before holding up the roses towards her. "Well, since I can tell you anything, I figure I should start by saying that these roses are for you," Roderick stated bluntly with a newly found confidence. Scarlet, as to be expected, was taken aback by this sudden revelation regarding the roses. "Roderick, is there something you're trying to tell me? I mean, friends don't go buy each other roses for no reason," she said, trying to make sense of the whole situation. "Because I don't want to be just friends," Roderick replied. Scarlet took a step back, looking a little hurt from the sudden answer. Roderick quickly noticed, and his confident demeanor started to melt away. I mean, I thought about this for a long time, and," he stammered. He felt as though he was digging himself deeper into the hole he unintentionally put himself into. "We've been friends since September, and, things come up. Not in an inappropriate way or anything like that. I think you're really beautiful," he blurted out, quickly covering his mouth in shock with his free hand. Scarlet was surprised by this response. "Would you please repeat that, Roderick?" she asked, him only replying with a shake of his head. She took a step forward, taking the roses from Roderick's hand and gently placing them onto the ground. "You think I'm beautiful?" she asked. This time, Roderick replying with a nod and a muffled, "mm-hmm." Scarlet replied to this by gently taking Roderick's wrist and removing his hand from his mouth. She then placed it on her waist before moving his other hand around the top half of her back. She then wrapped her arms around Roderick in a hug, Roderick returning said hug a few seconds later. "If it makes you feel any better, I think you're really handsome," Scarlet whispered into Roderick's ear. Just hearing those words caused Roderick's legs to buckle. As a result, he fell back onto the grass, accidentally bringing Scarlet down with him. The two ended up in a pretty awkward position, with her laying on top of him, almost straddling him. Scarlet giggled. "Geez, I know I'm quite a shy girl, but I didn't think I'd see the day you'd literally fall for someone, especially someone like me," she joked. Roderick laughed a little bit, replying with, "Hey, I'm the one making jokes between us." Once the two calmed down, the two got lost in each other's eyes. "I do think you're beautiful, though. Dare I say it, Roderick said to her before Scarlet hushed him with a finger on his lips. "You don't have to say anything else, Rod. I know what you're going to say," she stated. It didn't take long until she placed her own lips in place of the finger. That was it. This was exactly what Roderick had been dreaming of. There he was, alone with Scarlet, and kissing her on top of that. He held on dearly, kissing her back, his eyes closed, enjoying the moment between them. If only it wasn't overcast, it would be near perfect. Every little break from the kiss the two shared only made it feel more euphoric, and Scarlet's lips were placed back onto his. He took it in so much that he almost didn't hear a third voice talking. "Dispatch, this is Medic 17. I found 2 more infected individuals over here." While Roderick was still encaptured in the kiss with Scarlet, his mind was running amok with thoughts, mostly along the lines of, "Oh God, please no, don't let it end like this, please, please." A paramedic wearing yellow plastic surveyed the surrounding area as he approached the entrance to the school. The skies were dark, rain beating down upon the visors of the hazmat suit that he was wearing. The school itself was closed due to the outbreak, and around him was various other members of the emergency services, all wearing the same hazmat suits. Attached inside the suit was a radio back to the dispatch. "Medic 17, this is Mercy Hospital Dispatch. What is the state of the infected? Over." A female voice over the radio crackled back as the medic approached the pair of lovebirds. Laying on the cold pavement was Roderick and Scarlet. Their skin was a sickly white, their lips slightly black, and their eyes clouded gray. Just like the boy Roderick saw earlier that day, their uniforms were stained with vomit. Whose vomit it was anyone's guess. The two were side by side, facing each other, their hands clasped tightly as they weakly breathed, occasionally letting out a violent cough. They didn't want to cough in each other's faces, but they were too weak to move themselves away. All they could do was breathe and move their eyes around. They were still alive, but barely. For all the paramedics knew, they could be begging for someone to put them out of their misery. "We've got a teenage male and female laying in front of the school building. They appear to be alive, but I don't think they've got long left. They seem to be exhibiting the same symptoms that the virus has. I believe that they're close because they're holding hands," the paramedic explained. "We've tried getting in contact with their parents, but we've been unsuccessful. Reports suggest that the two got infected around lunchtime." He explained more as he walked away from the two, fading out over the sound of the sirens and other noises. Scarlet took one look at Roderick, his sickly face hurting her to gaze upon, but she didn't have a choice at this point. The two had tears in their eyes, freely flowing down their cheeks, the two being too weak to dry them from each other's faces on their own. Roderick," Scarlet weakly spoke, her voice near hoarse and raspy from the infection she had. Roderick, whose gaze was focused on where the paramedic had walked off to, looked back at Scarlet, responding with a weak, In case we don't make it, I just wanted to say that I love you. She explained the best she could. Roderick's grip on her hand tightened as he tried to respond with an I love you too. But all that came out of his mouth was, I love you. Before his heart finally gave out. The grip he had loosened, his eyes closed, his life slipping away from him. Roderick! Roderick! Scarlet panicked, her weak voice only to be met with no response from her lover. She silently wept as a few more paramedics picked up her body and placed it onto a stretcher, presumably to take her to an ambulance, leaving Roderick's body behind. She could only watch as another paramedic walked up to Roderick, placed him in a body bag, and zipped it up. She wanted to beg for their paramedics not to leave him there, but her voice was just about to give up on her. So she did the only thing she could think of at the moment. Retreat back into her mind and pray that her fantasy of her and Roderick kissing in the school field was still intact. After all, people do retreat into their minds after heavy trauma. Well, hello there. It appears you have made it to the end of this wonderful story. I'm not sure how many people actually listen through my videos in their entirety, but for those who do, here's a special secret message. Hope everyone had a super great day. It was Monday after all. I have been working on more frequent uploads. I know they're a lot shorter. Usually, there've been single story for the past couple, but they've been good long stories. I am currently working on an audio book, so that's going to take up an enormous amount of time, but I'm going to do everything I can to still keep these consistent videos coming out for you guys. So, my chair squeaks. I'm really bad at these. I hope everyone has a good night, and I hope you all enjoyed the story. Thank you again for listening, and like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Thanks, guys. Bye. I'm awkward.